Okay, so this is the next steps for Hadoop on Ubuntu session. The objective of this session is really just to highlight the work we did last cycle for Ubuntu and the 12.04 release, and discuss what our next steps with regards to both that work and working with Apache Bigtop and other upstreams are. So we have some representation from Apache Bigtop. We have Roman and Cos. Yeah. But you guys work for Cloudera, both of you?
No. I do.
You do?
I'm a chemist.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So, and just to explain the relationship between last cycle's work and Bigtop is that the packaging work we did was based on Bigtop with some changes due to the way we have to do our builds, basically. So quick one-on-one on what we did last cycle. We picked a few core components from Bigtop, so we didn't take a full set of projects from Bigtop. We targeted Hadoop, hbase, hive, zookeeper, and pig as 5 key projects that we wanted to package. We took the Bigtop packaging, which is a full build from source, but not offline, which was the challenge for our PDA distribution model. And we kept the same package structure. So for anybody using this packaging, it should be incredibly familiar. We don't rebuild any Java code, but we do rebuild all native integrations. And the primary objective of that was A, to support 12.04, where we had a number of linker changes that were causing issues with the upstream native build process. And B was to support deploying Hadoop on ARM-based architectures with native integration as well. So we delivered all that stuff. We picked fairly up-to-date versions of Hadoop and hbase as of about a month before we released. So we're Hadoop 102, hbase 0.92 something, 1 probably, and up-to-date versions on the other 3 components as well. Alongside that work, we also charmed this stuff with Juju. So there are now charms available in the charm store for Hadoop, hbase, and hive, and each of those charms has optional features on using pig as well. And that's really given us a really good story in terms of getting up and running with precise and Hadoop projects for this release. So I want to get some feedback on what people thought of that work, where we might go next with this. So in terms of aligning to the next Apache Bigtop release and the components you're going to be shipping. And then a few things that are more distro-centric in terms of the fact that for 12.10 we're going to be switching our default Java version to Java 7. And I would really like to use 12.10 as a way of testing the Hadoop ecosystem on Java 7 and helping drive some bugs upstream. And hopefully flushing out some patches for stuff that doesn't work quite so well with Java 7. I think this is going to be an issue generally, but I'm concerned that a lot of upstreams aren't pacing towards the end of this year when Java 6 essentially disappears from a security updates perspective. Okay, so if we kind of focused on the alignment to the next release of Apache Bigtop first. Roman, do you want to give an overview as to change between the 0.3 release of Bigtop and 0.4 in terms of the key differences?
Yeah, okay, sure. So Bigtop as a project, I mean, Bigtop is an Apache project, so as a project, Bigtop is trying to build a fully deployable, fully validated stack of big data management software based on Apache Hadoop. We are on a quarterly release schedule. It is a train model in a sense that we don't wait for features, so we release every quarter. For every next release, we try to determine in the community sort of way what the next bill of material would look like, you know, what components, what versions of component we should be targeting, and we release based on that. Last stable release of Bigtop, Bigtop 03, was based on Hadoop 1.0, and that's what James was talking about. We would like Bigtop 0.4 to be based on Hadoop 2.x, and the biggest change there will be 1.0 and 2.x. They're really quite incompatible. So 1.0 1.0 used to be just like a straightforward, God honest, MapReduce implementation. 2.x changed that architecture into more of a resource management architecture on which MapReduce is just an application. So on top of that resource management architecture, you could conceivably run things like OpenMPI, a couple of other things. So actually OpenMPI, I believe, is in the works. But it's a very, very different Hadoop. So one of the challenges there is, on one hand, sort of all of the focus of the Apache community is on 2.x. But it's not really fully ready for prime time yet, at least from my standpoint, again, from the test results and things like that I'm seeing. So there will be a period of time where we have to have some kind of a distribution based on 2.x out, just to give people an opportunity to test and kind of try the software out. But it will be very difficult to include anything like that into any kind of sort of stable upstream distribution, like Ubuntu LTS or anything like that. So for that reason, we're still keeping our branch 03 alive. So if we ever need to update that with additional sort of components or newer releases of downstream, we can do that. But again, given that all of the focus of the Apache community is on 2.x, it's kind of like if you have bugs or feature requests for 1.0, it tends to kind of get overlooked. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, it's not impossible. My experience with trying to get bugs fixed in the 1.0 branch is you have to fight quite hard to get stuff.
Pretty much, yeah.
But technically speaking, the Bigtop model, I tend to say Bigfoot for some reason. Bigtop model is allow for keep the releases of the early branches.
Yep.
So basically, at some point, we might decide to go with 0.3.1, 0.3.2, and so on. So far, if the updates in Hadoop 1.0 are required. So that's one of the possibilities.
Okay, and I'm still correct in saying that the Bigtop model is not to carry patches on the upstream distribution?
Yes, yep, that is correct. Yes. I mean, but
there is a mechanism.
I mean, yeah, there is a mechanism. So, like, for as long as we develop the next release of Bigtop, we tend to submit patches upstream, and just to facilitate our own sort of build and release cycle for the nightly builds. I mean, we have an ability of incorporating those patches, but when we actually sort of release the particular version of Bigtop, we actually try to get all of those patches upstream and get them from the upstream.
Okay, so your upstream patches pre-release.
Yes.
Which actually failed miserably with Hadoop 1.2, right?
Yeah.
Because the community was clearly not interested in carry on Hadoop 1.2 compatibility between the upstream components such as hive, whatever it is. And we had a stack in Bigtop released for Hadoop 22, which is actually a very minimalistic set of the components on top of it. Just the basically.
Okay, so really the question I wanted to drive out from that conversation was I'm really seeing the packaging we're doing as a kind of derivation of Bigtop. Yeah, we're doing a slightly different build process, but that's to work around our build environment restriction. What I really wanted to get feedback on was, and it was really one for the room, was whether we should, for this cycle, be targeting to have some Hadoop 2 packages alongside our existing 1.x packages. Yeah? Mark says yeah, so.
Plus one.
I mean, the trouble there, though, is that because they're quite incompatible, well, I should clarify that. They're actually really compatible at the level of just straightforward MapReduce sort of implementation. Like, if you were to take, a MapReduce book and, write your first MapReduce job, that is guaranteed to run on both. But if you're doing anything sort of more sophisticated than that, then you tend to bump into what's known as framework APIs of Hadoop. And framework APIs are the things that Pig, Hive, hbase, those guys tend to use. So those are incompatible between the two. And if you start including Hadoop, sort of Hadoop 1 and Hadoop 2 at the same time, you kind of have to figure out whether you would be including two sets of downstream components as well, like one pig for Hadoop 1 and one pig for Hadoop 2. or how else you would be doing it. I mean, that needs to be engineered.
So, what's Bigtop doing at the moment? Are you maintaining, when you have your associated packages with Hadoop 2, are you carrying patches on the other components for Hive or hbase or whatever to make them work with 2? Or is that still an upstream goal to make those things compatible? Or you having to pick new versions? I don't know the answer.
So most of the projects we actually were successful with pushing all of the patches upstream. So the only project who hasn't accepted all of the patches that we still have in our tree is Mahout. Everything else that we have in Bigtop is already sort of compatible with 2. At least, and that's where the build from source comes in. At least when you use special profiles in Maven or special targets in Ant, you do get the option of compiling the component in such a way that it will be compatible with Hadoop 2.
Okay, so that's where our current PPA approach, where we don't rebuild from source, is going to trip us up with Hadoop 2 compatibility.
Yes.
Okay.
Wasn't that what you meant by packaging Hadoop 2.0?
That's what I thought you meant, yeah.
This binary PPA?
Yes.
Or did you mean?
I don't mean from source. So
Okay.
I'm still talking the same approach we're taking at the moment, but we could put a Hadoop 2.0 preview out there, but unless we also address the stack compatibility with 2, it's just going to be a Hadoop. Yeah.
What, a PPA of the whole stack?
Yeah, exactly. So we can have a Hadoop 2.0 PPA equivalent set of PPAs which we can use from Charms or whatever. But we then have the associated hbase, Hive, whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out some way of making it work. Do the upstreams produce different binary distribution?
No. It's getting worse. So
I'm going now.
So all of the most of the upstream, I mean, they are into sort of experimenting with the software themselves. So like the default binary artifact that they tend to produce is the most, how shall I put it? It's the lowest common denominator. It's the stuff that they kinda don't want to break, but it might actually lack certain features. So just to give you an example, hbase, I mean, produces 2 artifacts, one, the usual artifact, and the other one that includes security. They cannot really produce it as one artifact. And, the list of features kind of goes on. So Apache in general is actually not that concerned with producing binary artifacts to begin with. I mean, binary artifacts in Apache land are mainly for developers to kind of just, have an easier time, right? I mean, they're not meant for the end users, at least not necessarily. So when you have a binary artifact, associated with a particular release, well, it's helpful to have it, but it doesn't guarantee that it will take care of all of the use cases that you have for the software. So Apache kind of assumes that what they produce as software is source releases, and everybody who wants can recompile from source and go from there.
And the binary is a convenience artifact.
Convenience artifacts.
Seen that mentioned before. I think we can work around this. I don't think it's a particularly big challenge, but we may need to do some process pre-source package build. So I don't think it's a big challenge, but it might be one that's fully automated, which is well, we probably can automate it actually, but we'll figure out something.
I think you guys in a position.
Sorry.
Good.
I was just thinking, I think there's enough interest in at this point to start really adopting this stuff to make it work well.
And besides, guys, you are in the business of producing a platform distribution situation. And I think it might be perfectly suitable for you to go ahead and put some upstream patches into your version of the distribution, if you will.
Yeah, pretty much exactly what we're doing.
Because the reason Bigtop has chosen not to go this route, because we don't want to end up in producing another distribution of the Hadoop stack and support it and fight.
Yeah, and even as a Linux distribution, we should have an upstream first policy. So
Exactly.
generally, yes, we may hold a patch, but hopefully by the time we release, same policy that it's being accepted upstream. We can sort that out. Okay, just so while we're talking about where this sits, obviously this is an overlater distribution at the moment, so this doesn't ship from the main archive and you have to take additional steps to enable these PPAs if you just want to use the packages. So I did put down revisit packaging from source. I'm actually going to propose that we don't really talk about that, other than to say we're not going to do it. Mainly because I know how big a job that is, so if we wanted to push this to the archive, we have to take each component and all of its dependencies that aren't already packaged, and we have to package those as well. And we also have trouble with version alignment to what we have in the archive, so we may have typically more recent versions of some dependencies. Sometimes we have older ones, or we have ones with missing features. And I think for this set of packages, it's probably doable, but I would debate the value based on the fact that 1.0 is having a regular release now. And there's a move towards 2, so whatever we put in archive is going to obsolete relatively quickly. And I've noticed that most Java upstreams, and I do other Java packaging outside of this area, aren't afraid of introducing new components and dependencies because it's really easy. It's not really easy to fix that in a release version of the item. So I'm just going to park that and say we're not going to do it. If someone else wants to do it, fine. We're not going to do it for the scope of this way.
So you're saying that if somebody will produce a stack suitable for Ubuntu consumption, that you might just include it as a whole, or I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So you're saying that if somebody will produce a stack which is suitable for Ubuntu consumption, the Hadoop stack suitable for Ubuntu consumption, will you be willing to just integrate it as it is, or I misread you?
So I'm not.
So you're not willing to actually go into the business of customizations and custom releases of
so it's not so much the customization. It's more validating a fully built Hadoop.
Right. Custom tailored and validated, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, but basically, if there is a stack produced by I don't know, open source project, whatever it is, that is completely suitable and tested for Ubuntu release, would you be willing to just integrate it?
Yeah, definitely. And that's the charm feature I'd like to deliver. So for 12.04, that wasn't possible because 12.04 wasn't out, so Bigtop wasn't targeting 12.04, it was targeting 10.04. So the binary packages produced by the standard Bigtop build for 10.04 don't work on 12.04. So you can't build them, and they don't work if you try and run them. Well, it's mainly native integration, and pretty much everything else works, which is why we did this. So for Bigtop 04, which should target 12.04 as a target distribution, there's definitely more scope just to use Bigtop upstream. And I'm correct in saying that Bigtop do produce a apt archive repository, and you're going to continue doing that?
Yes.
So that's definitely something that we should consider when we can consider the Ubuntu stuff. If Bigtop 1.4 is going to be producing devs that we can use anyway, then we may not need to push this to PPA in the first place. So I think if we just work closely on that, figure out what the timescales look like, then that will work nicely. I think we can probably park that one for the moment. So OpenKit JDK 7 is default Java in 12.10. There's a few tweaks need to go into the Java home resolution thing in Bigtop utils to make it pick up Java 7. And the way I was intending on delivering this was A as an option for the existing charms that we use for testing, and B as the default for if you're running on 12.10. So it's relatively easy to do. Is this something that Bigtop as a project is going to be looking at, or are you guys sticking with Java 6 as your kind of recommended alignment with upstream?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it would be very nice to have somebody looking into OpenJDK7, at least from the standpoint of, okay, so here's a release of Bigtop. Let's try it out with OpenJDK7 and see what happens, right? We're not targeting it as in one of the sort of points of the supported platforms, but it would be very nice for somebody to take a look. Like this year, it's not that burning of an issue for us. I mean, next year it will be.
Yeah.
And you're not targeting if you've done any performance characterization of it?
No, we just essentially don't have any bandwidth to even look at it at the moment. So if anybody's volunteering to just help us out, because we are actually pretty good about continuous integration. So we do continuous nightly builds of Bigtop. So anybody can just get our stuff, install, try it out.
The part I think Hadoop itself is not very eager to accept OpenJDK at the moment.
No, I think I've seen kind of the starter conversations on most mailing lists, but
it happens once in a while.
It's quite early still in terms of that upstream conversation. Okay. So that kind of leads me nicely onto the kind of testing of packages and functionality, which I think is somewhere where, as a derivation of Bigtop, we're quite weak at the moment. Yeah, we deploy them, we use it, but we're not doing any kind of formalized test process with our packages. Now, I know that Bigtop has test suites for this stuff, so I'd like to work this cycle on probably building those into our charms so that when we've deployed Bigtop or whatever, we can then pretty much automatically run the Bigtop test suites against our deployed configuration. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
So I don't know much about that side of Bigtop. So I wanted to understand from you guys what the kind of target topologies for that is. Do you guys test an all-in-one pseudo configuration, or are you doing more distributed cluster testing? Or
we kind of do both.
Yeah.
So we have a and that's actually an interesting question for you. So at the very base level, we just test the fact that you can install our packages, and it's not just Ubuntu. I mean, it's all the supported platforms that we have. So we have a set of tests that run on 7 or so different VMs. They start from clean slate. They, apt-get, yum install, zipper install, whatever it takes. The packages. So packages end up being installed in this sort of really tiny pseudo-distributed configuration, but the point of testing there is not to actually verify that the Hadoop works, but that the basic functionality of packaging itself doesn't sort of break Hadoop in its components, right? So that's very basic level. And I'm honestly, I don't even know how you guys do it in Ubuntu, because you have to, right? I mean, you have to verify that the packages that are produced, especially for the user level, I mean, they won't trash your system or something, because,
Yeah, so there is tooling in that area for developers to do install removal testing to make sure packages both install and remove from systems cleanly. And maybe that's something we can feed back upstream to you guys, because they're tools that are available in Ubuntu. So
yeah, that would be pretty.
That will be maybe a good upstream feedback to you. Okay. So
exactly.
yeah, we can definitely help that, and I think we'll probably do something similar, but using that tool set.
Right. Yeah. And then we also have test suites for smoke testing. So that's where our deployment side of Bigtop comes in. So we use Puppet recipes for full distributed deployment of Hadoop. So we typically we are bound by the amount of money we can spend on EC2 instances, because that's where we run our stuff. And again, if you happen to have hardware available, we'd love to use it.
Out of curiosity, what's your target number of instances, size and number of instances?
So right now we're running our tests on large instances, and we're typically spinning 5 large instances. So we have a 5-node Hadoop cluster where we run all of our smoke tests on.
Physical hardware? Or
No, it's all EC2.
EC2. So M1 large, what's the instance type you said?
Oh, it's 5 different
large
large instances.
Okay.
So it's a fully distributed cluster.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's nice, so we like EC2 not even so much for like what they give us as far as machines are concerned, but because, you know, there's this ability to spin up infrastructure on demand, deploy and, you know.
And how many hours at a time is it?
So typically, I think, you know, the small tests that we have run for about, right now, it's about four hours. So like we try to run it, you know, every night or so.
Okay. I know that HP OpenStack just exited beta today, but you know, we were using some of the free ones where possible. Rackspace has a free beta right now. I want to download.
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for is more of a project engagement. Okay. So I mean, I can personally like steal cycles from all sorts of friends of mine, right? That's possible, but I guess what I'm looking for is like organization who is willing to donate, you know, a certain amount of cycles to Apache Foundation, so that, you know, Bigtop can use it, you know, Work can use it, like, you know, all these projects. Actually, Amazon used to do that, and Work used to actually run on cycles donated by Amazon, but I think they stopped doing it. At least, you know, that's my understanding.
Is anybody from HP Cloud in the room?
So we can have like, you know, run on HP Cloud, you know, sticker on our Jenkins website and everything.
Stack,
yeah. Apparently, there's another issue with sitting on top of something else than AWS, because it requires actually changes in build infrastructure and deploy stuff. And, yeah, so, I mean, this is my minor annoyance, but it's still there.
We'll start doing more scale testing and then authorize to do that.
Sorry, what?
We will start doing more scale testing for some of our charms.
Yeah.
We've been authorized to do that. I'm not sure how wide we can get it or how regular we can be, but it sounds like at least we can test those.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like there's something we can definitely integrate into deployment testing one way or another. So,
and again, the nice thing about this test suite is that the deployment side is totally separate from the test side. So to some extent, you can use charms. I mean, that's absolutely fine. We're using Puppet because it gets us cross-platform. But they are totally separate. So like, use whatever you want to deploy and then just run the test.
just run the test.
Is the test suite part of the source?
Yes, that's right. And it's also, again, we are pretty good about publishing all of the Maven artifacts. So you can actually, we can kind of use our test suite outside of the Bigtop itself, because all of the Maven artifacts are published. So literally, the only thing that you have to have is like a POM file or, you know, Groovy script that hooks them up and, you know, executes them.
How parameterizable are those for different sizes? Like
yeah, not really that much. I mean, so it was like the stuff that we have in there was meant for small testing most of the time, and that kind of shows, right? I mean, we would love to have more tests that are more sort of scale tests and, you know, load tests, but that kind of stuff again.
I think if we adopted the Bigtop tests, then that's something we can have in terms of any changes we're making. Then we'll definitely feed those back, so that everybody can take advantage of that.
And maybe simultaneously doing our test.
Yeah.
That goes without saying.
Yeah. Okay, so I discussed some of the charm updates that we're planning for next cycle anyway. So support for Hadoop 2.0, support for Bigtop 0.0. One thing we lack in any of our charms at the moment is any type of security. So it sets up a Hadoop cluster that's completely unsecured. I know this feature in the Puppet manifest that one part of Bigtop to do with Kerberos-based security. So I was going to endeavor as a probably slightly lower priority task to deliver that into the charms as well. So,
you want to try that? You want to post all that?
Yeah, probably a simple. So I think that would be a really nice feature to have. And when I'm doing that charm review, I also want to review whether we might actually be best to run the Puppet modules. I think we'll get to a certain complexity point with our charms where that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you actually, like, the kind of Puppet that we use in Bigtop, it's a pretty low-key Puppet in the sense that we are trying to keep it to the configuration where you can run in a masterless fashion.
Yes.
So we do not require a Puppet server. That actually might work pretty well for
The
channels.
big distinction that we would make in the modules and the manifest would be sort of a difference in the initial install versus when it's related to the Slick clusters or the other vertical services. So that might have to be pulled out.
I think, yeah, and then I think if we choose to go that way, then that's something as we tweak those manifests and modules, then we can feed that stuff back to the code as well. So the only other we haven't covered on my list was really about any updates to the existing packages that we have out in 12.04. I was endeavoring on doing point release updates to the components we already have, but I wasn't going to do any major version upgrades to those things.
What archive or where is?
PPA based stuff.
PPA.
I'll put the links in.
And they're binary, they're not built from source.
And also the native outside of the general. But I'll probably keep pushing in point release upgrades, but nothing more than that. And I'll probably do that linked to the current dev cycle, so they'll go out every 6 months or so. Sound good? Okay. Okay. So that covers what I had in terms of discussion points. Is there anything anybody else would like to raise?
One more question about the deployment testing. Also for the storage, are you using UDS volumes or just local storage?
Well, Hadoop is all about local storage, so that's kind of the premise
Okay, so
of
you're not
it.
using Okay.
I mean, theoretically, I guess, if you want, yeah, then you would basically have to look into like how much it costs, right? You know, theoretically, it might, yeah.
Well, that was my question. Was, you know, are you paying massive amounts for EBS?
Oh no, not at all. No, actually, I was thinking the other way around. So, if you want to test fat nodes that have a lot of storage attached to them, I mean, I guess you can go like extra large or extra large. But at some point, you know, if you really want to test, you know, a node with like a couple of, you know, terabytes attached to it, maybe, you know, EBS would make sense. But again, so far it hasn't been an issue.
So whatever the default backup disk is.
We've tweaked the charms to allow you to set the root for all Hadoop file systems to the instance of storage that's associated with the instance you're provided with. And that's proven quite effective so far. It's definitely allowed us to make the most of any instance storage that's available for the instances we use.
I guess I also actually have a question for the audience. So, as far as Ubuntu server team is concerned, I mean, what kind of relationship do you guys envision between sort of yourself and Hadoop ecosystem? I mean, do you at some point want to sort of include it into the server distribution so you can kind of support it the same way you support the rest of the bits that come with the server, or like what's there for you?
I think at this point in time, probably not. I may be speaking out of turn there, and I think that's due to that obsolescence issue I was pointing out earlier. Is whatever we put in distro. Yeah, we do have some mechanism for putting in new upstream releases, but it's not elegant. Right. So, at this point in time, I see little value in putting it directly into the distribution, or at least in the traditional way. There's a canonical way of overlaying as well, which we can talk about. Mainly because of that obsolescence issue. I don't want to put something in distro that 6 months' time I was using because it's outdated. It just makes no sense at all. Because it's a lot of effort to make that happen. Also, I wouldn't like it to happen, but it's just from a practicality perspective.
PPA is a problem. I mean, that's a thing. Would end users experience PPAs as a problem at all? I don't think so.
I think for what we're doing at the moment, that's fine. I think if we wanted to formalize support around Hadoop on Ubuntu, and that's more of a canonical question rather than the Ubuntu question, then we need to look at distribution. So PPAs do not have the same credibility that the main archive or the canonical partner archive, for example. So there are other channels we can use to do the official distribution rather than PPA.
And then just feeding back performance, or like doing performance testing and stuff like that, getting what tweaks we need to make to the server, make it sync. IMS and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whatever you call it.
It'd be good to do that. Yeah, I think we're looking to do some scale testing around Hadoop on Ubuntu with these channels. And I don't see much kind of open communication anywhere about how people are tweaking performance in larger clusters. So we'd like to be open about that, and we will be. But it would be good if we could kind of start building some upstream collaboration around that type of thing as well.
Do you know if anybody's done any performance characterizations, even in 1.0 of JVMs for JVMs, or performance characterization at all, and also particular JVMs?
Not as far as sort of focus on JVM is concerned. I mean, there's a bunch of sort of papers on how to tune Hadoop, and JVM definitely is part of it, but I haven't seen anything that would be sort of solely focused on JVM. So most of the time it's focused on TCP IP stack or the Linux kernel file systems tuning that you need to do. JVM, yes, a little bit, like as far as garbage collection is concerned and stuff like that. But it's mostly on the system side, really.
Because basically, Hadoop performance is not one recipe fits all, right? So you might be CPU bound, you might be data bound, whatever it is. And depending on what type of workload you carry on, you might have to employ different tricks here and there. And as Ron said, garbage collection might be particularly an issue for the huge clusters where you have, testing the limits of the JVM in terms of memory utilization, but otherwise.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to get, is sort of which benchmarks would be the most sort of generically useful to tune against or something, or to test against even.
That is true, but I don't think anything like that exists. I mean, I mean, there's not even collection of benchmarks, like at least with spec, I mean, you have like this collection of things, right? With Hadoop, you have things here and there and over there. Vendors, twist and, turn it, to fit a particular purpose.
I'm sorry, I may missed something then. So y'all, what do you do to get data? What do you do for scale testing itself?
Like in Bigtop, we actually don't do much of scale testing at all. Pretty much we do zero scale testing. Now, it just so happens that we work for Cloudera, and Cloudera is using Bigtop pretty much 100% for the sort of next version of CDH, Cloudera distribution of Hadoop. That does get tested, in scale environment.
Proprietary.
Yes. And some of it does percolate back sort of to Bigtop proper, but it's not a formal sort of testing on the open source project itself.
What's your upstream recommendation on JVM? Is it OpenJDK or is it Sun?
Sun. Well, these days it's Oracle, I guess, but
Sun.
I still call it Sun.
Do you test at all on OpenJDK?
No, we don't.
It doesn't work.
Okay.
There are a number of known issues where JDK is simply screwed up.
So back to the Ubuntu community perspective, which is where I'm coming from here, the couple of things that would need to happen to really work well with the Ubuntu community is working with testing on, working with OpenJDK. That's pretty much our only option. Enterprise deployment, sure, Sun they can do that, but from an Ubuntu community perspective, OpenJDK is the only option.
Understood.
True, right. But I think we're circulating here, right? So we've been talking about this. It really depends on how the Hadoop community and upstream projects adopt the Hadoop itself, how fast they will be willing actually to go with OpenJDK implementation. Apparently, it's not going to happen with OpenJDK 6, I believe.
It's not going to happen what?
It's probably not going to happen with OpenJDK 6.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not.
Because it's similarly not moving.
The point is that focus in OpenJDK is happening to 7.
Right.
Because it's just so much closer
Exactly.
to Oracle.
Exactly.
Oracle Java 7 is OpenJDK 7 plus 0.5% of Oracle stuff. Whereas OpenJDK 6 and some Java 6 are completely different beasts. They have heritage, but no, they're not immediate assets.
So you're saying that Outlook is bright?
Yeah, that's right. You've got to wait 8 months.
The future is absolutely
There were
gorgeous.
some rumors going around that Oracle is planning to abandon some GDK and go completely with a single implementation.
You should spread that rumor.
Well, if you believe that information, spreaded information can affect the habits.
So to be honest, the magic source that Oracle's adding in Java 7 is not particularly pertinent to server deployments, in my opinion, anyway.
Right.
It's more plugins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think in 12 months' time, everyone will be in a much better place with compatibility between Oracle Java and OpenJDK. In the meantime, I would encourage anybody who's using OpenJDK 6 to run Hadoop to submit bugs. Because the OpenJDK guys will accept them and try and work on them. We'll find time.
I'm not even sure if Hadoop 2.0 compiles in OpenJDK whatsoever. I have
But it would be an interesting, it would be an interesting experiment.
So the upstream Hadoop wiki points to a bug I reported about OpenJDK 6 compatibility, which I think has been fixed now. So, but it does run on OpenJDK 6. We haven't seen many issues with running on OpenJDK 6, and our charms use that because we have no automated way of putting in Oracle Java 6 because of the distribution.
Through licensing and stuff.
So if you're looking at like a longer term outlook of ever distributing Hadoop as part of Ubuntu in the archive, those things to start incrementally working forward.
Understood.
We're running on the OpenJDK JVM and compiling with.
Actually, it reminds me that recently I stepped in a completely weird situation where I couldn't compile Bigmix with neither OpenJDK or SunJDK because of the generic issues. On Ubuntu 12.4, and nobody else could confirm that they see the same.
Okay, anything else from the floor? I don't know whether we've got anybody on IRC. I noticed Craig was logged into the pad, but he's not here. I know that, but I don't know whether he's tuned in or not. So, okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.